Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kartika Sari. So here we are from group 6 want to explain about printed journalism or journalistic cetak. Print journalism is a type of journalism based on publication media. Print journalism is also called newspaper journalism and magazine journalism, referring to the main types of print media. Collins Dictionary defines printed journalism as the profession or practice of reporting, shooting, or editing news for the newspaper or magazine. The scope of print journalism is the same as the scope of journalism in general, namely news, media, newspapers, writing, journalistic, photographers, reporters, and information. Printed journalism has a lot of advantage. One of them, the price of this print media is quite affordable because publishers have received funding from the advertiser. Furthermore, printed journalism also have a drawback. One of the lifespan of the newspaper can be short, making it less profitable for long-term advertisers. The main character of print journalism is that news is published through print media. Other characteristics as print journalism goes through a long process, including coverage, writing, editing, layout, and printing. Okay, the next part will be explained by my friend Uun Nita Sari. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Uun Nita Sari. My student number is 321910179. Here I will discuss about types of print media, corporate and print media news search techniques, the progress of science and technology, and bringing people to the area is instance with various media that can be used as a tool communication media. In general, the public knows several media, namely print and electronic. Then, in this case, the print media can be divided into several intermediate parts other. Number one is newspaper, namely a collection of news, articles, stories, advertisement, and so on, which is printed on a sheet of flipkart paper. Is published automatically, regularly, every day, or once a week. Number two, magazine is a collection of news magazines, articles, stories, advertisement, and so on, printed on sheet of folio or quattro size paper, bound in book form. Magazines are usually published regularly, once a week before once or once a year. Number three is tabloid is a collection of news articles, stories, advertisement, and so on, printed on broadsheet size sheet of paper, smaller than flipkart and folded like a newspaper. Tabloid usually published regularly, once a week, 2 weeks, or once a month. Number four is bulletin. It's a collection of news articles, stories, advertisements, and so on, printed on broadsheet size paper, sheets smaller than flipkarts and folded like a newspaper. Bulletin usually appears irregular or frequently, is called derivative publishing. Number five, books are writings about science, essays, stories, land history, and so on, printed on half-size sheets of paper, neatly bound quarto or half folio. The types of print media that become the choice is formed by magazine. The visualization is more attractive by displaying illustration, pictures, and photos, which are generally printed or quality paper to get visual quality. The best apart from the above types, the print media with various function and shape can be divided into several parts, namely daily newspaper. This is a type of print media that is published every day, except on certain days such as national holidays. This type of print media is still divided again become national daily newspaper, regional daily newspaper, and later local daily news. The news that is delivered is a type of news or news up to date information on covered by system strike news or as is weekly newspaper. Newspaper of these types are more commonly known as tabloid. Usually, the news that is rise is entertainment news or is the news or corporate deep. Writing in this media is more of a future descriptive style. Weekly magazine. This type of magazine is published once a week. The news that was rise was is deep news with this type of news is news or about a news event. Mid-monthly magazine. This magazine is published twice a month. More news is displayed, informative and usually contains news about lifestyle or lifestyles. Monthly magazine. Monthly magazine published on the type of news that is delivered usually means investigative or news obtained from the result research. Monthly magazine. This magazine is published on a 2 months. Information that copied in the magazine is usually related to reports of activity results something. For example, company balance reports or also magazine that contain report income of a Jakarta institution. Tribulan magazine. This magazine has a concept similar to that of Dwi Bulan magazine. What distinguishes is only the issue of time, which is done every 3 months. There are various kinds of technique used by reporters to get the data, facts, and information needed. Number one is interview. Interviews are communication activities through the process of exchanging information between reporters and source. According to Widodo, an interview is defined as an operation to find news by contacting source, either directly, face to face, or indirectly, such as via telephone or in writing. The interview itself can be said to be the backbone of a journalist or reporter jobs because almost no journalist or reporter's job is done without interview someone to be asked for information about an event. Number two, reporters' observation in the field. In, in searching for news, a reporter gets information from various sources. However, all this was not enough to make news reporter must go directly to the location of an event or better known as observation. This is so that the information obtained is truly valid in, accord, in accordance with ongoing or on or ongoing or occurring events. Number three is document research or written information. Document research or written information is a sort of news material that will complement the data and facts of an incident. This document research can be in the form of decreased excitement, written data, press release, letters of appreciation, and so on relating to events.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Wulandari. I'm class B morning. My student number is 321910175.
The processing and updated media data printing. Editor management of print media. Redaction management is the process of reporting materials management through the stage of planning, organization, movement, and surveillance, which includes coverage, writing to editing. Number 1. Print planning. The planning stage is to determine the content of tomorrow's news and to discuss any news that needs to be followed up. The process of finding and creating news usually begins editor through projection or new planning meetings. Number 2. Organization. This stage is the compilation of organizational structure and the division of job assignments and the placement of the following presence within the organizational structure. Number 3. Movement. The movement stage is an activity that encourages people to produce journalistic product. Number 4. Surveillance. It knows whether the performance of the work has gone according to the original plan or not. This stage is critical to maintaining the rubric is kept out of line and code of journalism. The management structure in each printing media differs from the others depending on the policies and regulation of a printing press. Writing the news for the printing press. Writing on printed media is written under a 5W plus 1H formula to keep the news complete, accurate, and yet to meet technical standards of journalistic, meaning that it's composed in a fixed pattern and easily discerned by readers, listeners, or viewers. However, in writing a message of interest and of the following conditions. Number 1. Deciding leads. In starting news, the writer first designates of lead terrace. Usually in lead writing, authors use more of the elements what, who, and when. The reason for the writing of leads is not justified in using long sentences. However, in leads should include the entire content of the body news. Number 2. The writing of the body news. After the end of the lead is determined, the writing will begin to develop the content of the news within the news body. In the news body, the writer reports the event or even in more depth and in chronological of the news. Usually, authors employ more elements: who, where, how, and when. In the writing of the body of the news, the writer note of the plot. Number 3. Determining the correct titles. In practice, the headline was determined entirely by the editor of Urban Desk, when KKP authors are expected to focus more on leads and body news. If the headline is short and exciting, it will attract audience of reader to read it. Sometimes writers have difficulty starting news reports. Next, I want to explain the journalistic language of print media. The language of journalism is the language by which journalists write the news. Journalistic is a language of mass communication, a language that is a way of communication through the media both by word and writing. According to Rahadi 2010, the future of the journalistic language is communicative, specific, safe word, clear meaning, and ambiguous or irrelevant. Number 1. Communicative. The language of journalism is straightforward, unflowery, straight to the point. Thus, the language of journalism must be straightforward, simple, accurate, and appealing. The language of journalism that meets this requirement will become to communicative language, a language that does not easily lead to misunderstanding, a language that does not easily lead to dual interpretation, and a language that will be loved or loved by the masses. Number 2. Specific. Journalistic language must be composed with short or short sentences, simple forms of familiarity, easy to discern by the masses and easy to understand by the masses must always be emphasized or prominent in the journalistic language. Thus, the words that arise must be specific in nature and denotative in meaning so they cannot be multiple interpretations. The title sample was a concise and interesting article. Number 3. Safe word. The language of journalism is defined by the language or word economy. The language forms used in journalistic language whenever possible have a lack of word characters or a small number of letters. A journalistic preference should lead to more simple, short, and fewer letters of characters, not longer forms. The language sample is not wasted. Number 4. Clearly meaning. In the journalistic language, it is wherever possible that denotative words are used, not descriptive words, and they are used with significant euphemism, which is viewed as an inefficiency of words in language of journalism. And the last is unambiguous or irrelevant. The superfluous form refers to the real words or phrase that are omitted and the sentence that become their host. And the exclusion of these words does not alter the meaning. Cliches or stereotypes are typical words that are characterized by such words as charming, exhausting, boring, endlessly repeated, no innovation, no variation, just recounting candor. Words like these are commonly spoken by words. Journalistic language should avoid all of that. For the sake of clarity, for the purpose of clarity, and for the sharpness of presentation of idea. If you don't understand, you can ask us. Well, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.